and Lisa Gedgaudas from Denver Arts and Venues and Create Denver. Lisa, thanks for joining us today. So that's a bummer, but that's, it's important that we're getting that sense of granularity and detail. And actually, I'm going to start your segment just by tossing you a really good question that's come in from Alicia Smith asking, basically given those numbers, what should entertainment professionals do at this point? Is there enough potential support to hold out and wait for jobs to return? Or is it time for professionals to plan on pivoting? Is there enough potential support from policymakers? And is this just going to be the new normal? Is there going to be permanent loss as well? I mean, what are you seeing in Denver? How is your community trying to respond to the crisis? And what advice are you giving to your community in terms of artists and others that want to work in creative industries?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I don't know how to follow up the words total carnage very well, but I'll try. And I think, to give a little background with my agency, it's Denver Arts and Venues. So we're a little different than Margaret, where we're outside of the city budget. We're run by our venues like Red Rocks and our Performing Arts Complex and a few others. And I'm on the arts side supporting creative industries. So it's been so key to have Michael and Margaret in lockstep throughout the past few years on this. And we're excited to have this data come out, even and especially in trying times right now, because it certainly puts us to work in the way that we've already been mobilizing, right? Mm-hmm. So having that methodology be the same throughout the state and city, and aligning that kind of symbolic partnership to advocate for more money, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. I could talk for a second on Red Rocks too. Being outside of the city budget, we're relying on Red Rocks revenue to pay for our staff and all of our other venues and upkeep. But we're looking at what we would typically make in a year of about 54 million, and expenses being around 48. In COVID times, we're looking at projecting 8 million in revenue, and trying to redistribute how we do expenses, but our expenses are 14 to 18 million. So we feel it in our own space. And so certainly it's our job to deploy ourselves to show up for our community right now. I've done a lot of legwork with other partners to talk to our music venues. We've had a lot of Zoom calls, one-on-one, a lot of therapy sessions. But it's so important and key to be talking to folks in the creative community and let them speak out about their needs, whether it's our venues or our artists or, patrons of the arts looking to help support better. But more specifically, right now we're using that data. The city had some CARES Act funding come in, and we were able as arts and venues to apply for $2.5 million. And that really would go to artists, an artist relief fund that we started back in April that was exhausted within 3 weeks of opening, to replenish that, as well as support creative businesses, non and for profit. And then our venues, both performing arts and music venues. We're worried about everyone, but we're really concerned about our music venue establishments. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a loss of about 90% of them across the nation if this rate keeps going, and the assumption is we don't open until 2021. So that data directly aligns with that advocacy to fight for that 2.5 million, which again is not that much money, but it's something. We can leverage that money with other philanthropic dollars, and I think that's always the goal, is like, how do we leverage this and get this story out? We want the press to pick this up. We're glad to be sharing it with this group today, but we hope to have it out next week, and we really want our press to kind of put the pressure on too and get these numbers out. And then on a more national level, I think, as a city and as the state, it's been so important to connect with our other cities across the nation and the globe. I've been sitting on the NIVA weekly meetings, which is the National Independent Venues Association, and they've got over 2,000 members since April. And they're doing a ton of lobbying efforts. Right now, they have an open letter to Congress looking for regulatory assistance for venues. They're also going to be asking for, I think it's Restart Act money to provide benefits for venues as well. So this open letter they put out has over 1 million people that have signed it, celebrities, musicians, and otherwise. So it's got some strong pull there. And then they're also trying to raise about $100 million towards the venue to kind of keep them open. And that's the difficulty too, and not to just pivot on music, but they were the first to close and they'll be the last to open. And we're looking at, application questions like, are you 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12? How soon do you need this money? Even knowing that they may still close, how do we let them survive a little bit longer in case other tools in the toolkit come out? So it's a group effort. There's stuff we can be doing on the ground here. But again, resources are scarce and everyone's going through that. So I think getting on a more national scale to advocate for these funds is key. So again, hats off to Michael for all his work on this. We're just glad to get it out as soon as possible. And I would suggest too that in order not to reinvent the wheel, not that we don't want Michael to get hired for more things like this, but I would say to our cities or leadership, please use this data as your own. This could be, certainly translated over to your own cities, although different in size and population and all that. But I think that this is a good model to just share out with your own leadership if you can take it and run with it. Yeah.
Lisa, I know you guys in Denver have been thinking a lot about what's been happening in the streets and a lot of the very challenging things that are happening in most American cities related to equity and justice, and where does music fit into that conversation? We were really excited 2 weeks ago to have Nikki Swarn from The Drop in Denver talk a lot about what's happening in the Denver music community related to platforms and opportunity. I know you're doing some things at the city level to be more connected into those conversations. Is that right? Could you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good example of how we've been trying to support the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as our, Black, Indigenous, and people of color in communities and our artists. How do we find ways to activate them and provide a platform for them right now, especially as a city? Little do people realize we work for them, and we do. And to activate just that mentality alone and make sure our creative community knows that. We've been asking a lot in ways, building platforms online for them to talk out about ways that they could get more involved in selection processes for public art, or, make it more inclusive. And we're coming up with more and more lists. And some of it doesn't cost a dime. And that's what's really important too. One of the examples though is that COVID happened and we weren't having city council meetings in person, but once they started again was right around when all the stuff was going on with George Floyd. And I thought, okay, we need to re-up this program we used to do, which was once a month, pay $200 for an artist to come in and perform at the top of the hour for 5 minutes at a city council meeting. And what better timing than to really reach out to our community of color and say, we're providing you a platform, you're knocking on the door already. How about let's do this through a creative process? We have an artist next week going in named AP, Anthony Price, and he just put out a great video a few weeks ago called Freedom, so he's going to be performing that. So if, again, cities can find ways to provide a platform, I encourage it. Steal ideas from other people. Put murals on the ground, whatever it takes.